Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. I wanted to come out here because we have some unique experience in New York State that I want to share with you in Oregon. And I want to start by saying this. I do not believe that this LNG facility, that either of these, in Coos Bay or the Columbia, will ever be constructed. And I don't believe the pipelines will ever be constructed. And the reason I don't believe that is because these developments, these industrial developments, fly in the face of everything that Oregon represents, the unique culture that Oregon has, the unique values that you have as a people here, and the fact that you become the template, the exemplar for the rest of the nation of what progressive values and enlightened values can do for a people. You have fought harder to hold on to your democracy and your democratic values than any other region of the country, and everybody knows that about Oregon. And if you do this, if you let this happen, this is an assault not just on the environment, but it's assault on democracy, and it's assault on all of the values and aspirations that the people and the children of Oregon hold dear. This project will transform Oregon into a colonial economy. That's what it's about. Do you want an extraction economy here? An extraction economy where Canadian oil barons sell their gas to Chinese utilities and Chinese government officials. Is that what you want here in Oregon? You want to be a byway for that? Because we know what colonial economies do to a people. They create an oligarchy, what we call a corporate kleptocracy, where there's a few very wealthy thieves and corporations at the top, and the rest of it, and makes a few people billionaires by impoverishing a few Canadian oil men, Calgary oil men billionaires, by impoverishing the people of Oregon. Is that what you want here in Oregon? So I'm going to tell you this, that in 30 years as an environmental advocate, I have recognized a truth, which is wherever you see large-scale environmental destruction like the kind that they're planning in this project, you'll also see the subversion of democracy. You'll see the corruption of public officials. You'll see the capture of the agencies that are supposed to protect the rest of us from pollution. You'll see the destruction of transparency in government. You'll see the subversion of the press in some cases. You will see the destruction of local control and local sovereignty. And you will see the theft of property by large corporate entities who now control the government using political clout to trample our private rights of speech, of assembly, and ultimately to hold private property. And I want to ask you this. At what point in this country did we create the right of eminent domain for private foreign billionaires to take our property away without paying us? Is that something that's part of the American experience? Isn't that why Europeans came to this country, to get away from that in Europe, where big, powerful people could come and take your property away? Well, that's what's happening here. And, you know, I look at this and say, at least when the government takes your property, they have to show that there's a public benefit.
Right.
But where's the public benefit here? Well, there's 145 jobs in Coos Bay, and that's a good thing. But it's going to steal jobs from the rest of the state. And the benefit of those permanent jobs is not commensurate with the environmental damage that's going to be suffered by the people of Coos Bay from the destruction of those salmon streams, which is going to happen. We have pipelines all over New York, and guess what? All pipelines leak. That is a law of nature. And when they build them, they're going to destroy that critical habitat, and they're going to damage the environment. But they're also, we know this, they're going to aggravate global warming. This isn't just going to be the biggest power plant and the biggest global warming gas emitter in Oregon. It is going to, if you look at the life cycle of fugitive emissions from extraction and drilling to transportation to production and to liquefaction, degasification, and redistribution, the whole life cycle of that product, they are leaking so much gas that it makes them a much greater emitter of greenhouse gas than coal does. And they're not going over, they say, well, we're going to go over to China and we're going to displace coal over in China. Well, there's no guarantee of that. Show us that on paper before you do that. Because I can guarantee you they are not going to displace coal in China. They're just going to add another greenhouse gas that is worse than coal.
Absolutely.
So, I want to say this, that you ask yourself, I did an editorial a year and a half ago with David Crane, who is the CEO of NRG, which is the biggest energy producer in the United States of America. And David Crane, his company has coal plants, they have gas plants, they have nuke plants, they have oil plants, they have wind, and they have solar. So he's agnostic about what kind of energy he uses. He wants to use the cheapest kind of energy for his shareholders. And what he said in that editorial for the New York Times is that in 30 states in the United States, if he has to spend $100 million on a new power plant, he will put that money into solar. And this was when gas was at a historic low of $2 per thousand cubic feet. And so, well, he is doing that. And but the gas and all of the carbon incumbents understand this relationship. And we, the solar and wind energy industry, can now produce electrons and deliver them to the consumer much cheaper than the incumbents, than the carbon cronies, than wind, solar, or nuke. So, I mean, than coal, oil, gas, or nuke. So, what do they have to do? The only way that they can hold on to their market is through using political clout to obtain massive subsidies for themselves. And the World Bank or the IMF just announced that trillions of dollars that they get in subsidies to the carbon industry every year.
That's socialism.
And yeah, it's socialism. It is a cushy socialism for the rich and a brutal, savage capitalism for the poor. And that's what they want. That's the vision that they have for Oregon. So they know that the only way that they can hold on to their market advantage is through political clout by distorting the marketplace and giving themselves an advantage in the marketplace. So you wonder, why is it that the Koch brothers are putting $900 million into this presidential race? That's just their beginning bid. That's as much as the Democratic Party, and it's as much as the Republican Party. Why? Are they doing that because they love our country? Are they doing that because they're great patriots? Are they doing it because they love democracy and they want to see it function? No. They're doing it because they know that that's the only way that they can hold on to their profits, if they can own the politicians, if they can use our campaign finance system as a system of legalized bribery to get their hooks into our public officials and make Congress their indentured servants in Washington, D.C., which they've already done. And then maintain that advantage in the marketplace. And they have changed the laws subtly in ways that most Americans don't even know about to give themselves that advantage. And their strategy is to make it easy to build infrastructure. They have made it almost impossible in this country to build transmission lines. And yet, they've made it very, very easy to build a pipeline. So in the last 10 years in this country, we have built 16,000 miles of pipeline and only 600 miles of transmission, which is the media that we need, the wind and solar needs, to get our product to market. So they made it almost impossible for us to get our product to market because they know we can beat them there. But they made it very easy for them to get their product to market. And what does it do when they build a pipeline? What does it do? It locks us in. It fortifies their market and their business model for the next 20 or 100 years. You know what kind of contracts that they have to get this pipeline financed? They have to have at least 20-year contracts. That means that no matter how cheap solar and wind get over the next 2 decades, somebody is going to have to burn that gas. Somebody's going to have to. Legally, they have to, or they have to pay that company money. So they're trying to build these big facilities that are going to be there for the next 100 years, and that are going to lock us in to this antiquated, destructive, terrible business model for 100 years after it's archaic and after any economic rationale has elapsed. And you know what? California has said no, we're not going to do it. Washington has said no, we're not going to do it. Vancouver, British Columbia has said no, we're not going to do it. So they see the weak target as Oregon. Are you going to let them do it? And they've called, should I repeat that? Okay, they said, California said no, Washington said no, British Columbia said no, and they see the weak link as the state of Oregon. Are you going to let them make this the weak link? So they're going to try to buy the politicians in this state. They're going to buy the local politicians. They're going to buy the congressional politicians. They're going to buy the senatorial politicians. And they're going to try to buy the legislature and the governor. Well, that's got to be their plan, because it makes no economic sense. You know, I'll tell you this. About a year ago, representatives from Dow Chemical, it's somebody we've been suing for many years, and DuPont came to the Waterkeeper Alliance, and they said, we want to finance your battle against LNG. We said no, but we said we like the way you think. Oh, why do they want to finance us to fight LNG? Because the energy costs are one of the highest costs for their factories. They want to build factories in the United States, and methane is the primary feedstock for virtually the entire chemical industry. So they want to build those factories in the United States, and guess what? That's what they did, because the fracking in this country drove the price of gas, natural gas, all the way down to $2 per 1,000 cubic feet. Now it's $4.60. Guess what it is in Asia? It's $17. So if you look at the EIS for this Jordan Cove development, the developer himself admitted that the reason they want to build this facility is to drive the price up, to create an equilibrium in the price, so that we're paying the same thing for natural gas in this country as they're paying in Asia.
No, we're not going to do it!
So why is that good for the people of the United States of America? They're going to drive the price up. This gas pipe is not, they're trying to build one of these in New York State, but they pretend that gas and that oil is coming to New York State for us to burn, so they can make a justification for it. But what they really want to do is they want to get it to New York State so they can put it in another pipeline and get it up to Halifax and turn it into natural gas and send it to Europe. We know that, but they're not stupid enough to say it. But here, they were stupid enough to say it. How is that better? How does that give them the right to steal your property so that they can drive the price of gas up for the American people and close down this manufacturing renaissance? Is that a public benefit? So we know this, and this is what Oregon represents, is this idea, two ideas, this idea that we're not protecting the environment so much for the sake of the fishes and the birds and the salmon. We're protecting it because we know those things enrich us. We know that nature is the infrastructure of our communities, and that if we want to meet our obligation as a civilization, as a nation, as a generation, we have to provide our children with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us. We've got to safeguard our environmental infrastructure. And they are going to overlay that environmental infrastructure with an industrial infrastructure that will degrade and destroy it and destroy the values of this state. They know that. We know this also. That good environment, we don't listen to the mantra of the Koch brothers when they say we have to choose between economic prosperity on the one hand and environmental protection on the other. That is a false choice. In 100% of the situations, good environmental policy is identical to good economic policy. if we want to measure our economy, and this is how we ought to be measuring it, based upon how it produces jobs and the dignity of jobs over the generations, over the long term, and how it preserves the value of the assets of our community. We know this, that $1 invested in solar and wind creates 17 times the number of jobs as $1 invested in oil or gas. But they want to suck us and trick us into investing that money in oil and gas to lock in that infrastructure. So it doesn't matter what the economics say. So we are locked into that infrastructure by contracts, no matter how bad the economic model looks for the rest of us. And we know this, that if we want to do, if we want to do the good thing, the right thing, good environmental policy and good economic policy says we got to turn down this, and shut down this project and tell them to go away. And that Oregon is not going to lay down for them. We're going to stand up the way California. If, on the other hand, we want to do what the Koch brothers and what the Calgary oilmen want us to do, which is to treat Oregon as if it were a business in liquidation, convert our natural resources of this state to cash as quickly as possible, have a few years of pollution-based prosperity, we can generate an instantaneous cash flow and the illusion of a prosperous economy. And we can make a few people in Calgary billionaires by impoverishing the people of this state.
We won't be hoodwinked.
And our children are going to pay for our joyride. And they're going to pay for it with denuded landscapes and poor health and huge cleanup costs that are going to amplify over time and that they will never be able to pay. Environmental injury is deficit spending. It's a way of loading the costs of our generation's prosperity onto the backs of our children. And this project doesn't even make sense to one generation. It just is a bad deal all around. And I believe in free market capitalism. I believe that a true free market would promote efficiency, and efficiency means the elimination of waste, and pollution is waste. And a true free market would require us to properly value our natural resources like the salmon and the forests and the fishes and the air and etc. What they want us to do is to discount those things. And in a true free market, you can't make yourself rich without making your neighbors rich, and without enriching your community. What polluters and what these pipeline moguls want to do is not to make everybody wealthy, but to make themselves wealthy by making everybody else poor. To raise standards of living for themselves by lowering quality of life for everybody else, for all the people of Oregon, and to trample our civil rights, to trample our property rights, to destroy the air, the water, the salmon fisheries, all those things that make us who we are. And I would say to you, do not let them do this to your state. Do not let them do this to your children. And whatever you do, to force these politicians, to remind these politicians that they are working for you. They are not working for the oil company. Thank you all very much.
Thank you to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and to all of our guest speakers.